Hello and welcome to the fifth and final unboxing video for the Magic the Gathering Commander 2013 product. So this one is the one with the green side panels on the box. This is the Nature of the Beast deck. The colours of the commander in this one are red, green, white. So if you're using again Shards of Alara as a sort of naming convention here, which I've done with the other decks, this would be seen as the Naya deck. So in Naya colours, which were from Shards of Alara, and I go into a bit more detail actually about shard naming and wedges in relation to the colour pie on my first unboxing video, which is the evasive manoeuvres. So if you need a bit more explanation about what shards are, what wedges are, when you're looking at three colour combinations, watch that video first really. Anyway, so this is red, green, white. This is Naya. So using that convention, in shards, the green was seen as a primary colour and the red and the white was secondary. I don't know if that has any significance in the actual commander products, but that's when you relate it back to Shards of Alara. That's how that was presented. Because obviously there were certain mechanics that were particular to the colour theme from shards. So it'd be interesting to see as these decks play whether those themes play out in the commander deck. So let's open this up. Same as with the others, obviously. We're going to take a look at the 100 card deck itself. The three oversized cards in here, and a quick look at the strategy of the deck. And also in here is the box to keep it in, and a how to play guide for Magic generally. So let's just have a look at our oversized generals first of all, and then when I come to do the deck itself I will go through in a lot more detail as to their abilities and costs and power and toughness. So the three oversized cards you get are Marath, or Will of the Wild, which would be considered to be the sort of main commander. Then also we've got oversized cards for, here we go, let's see if I can say this one, Gaiaji, Honoured One, and Mael the Anima. And of course, not surprisingly, they are all in Naya colours. Now you may also notice that in this deck there are other legendary creatures as well, but they wouldn't obviously be usable necessarily as an alternative commander, because they may not contain all three colours, and this deck is obviously going to draw from all three colours. And if you read the sort of how to play guide and anything about commander, you'll know what the significance is of the commander colours. So before I go through the deck, actually let's do what I've done with the other one. So we'll have a look a bit at the specific insert for this actual product, because there's a bit of a, gives you a bit of a sort of background into what the deck's about. Oops. Let's just zoom out on this one. Okay, so there's our deck listing, and as I pointed out, what it doesn't do is it doesn't give you a list of if it's been reprinted or what it came from, which is often useful, I think, if you're looking for inspiration to modify the deck. I think that's sometimes useful for looking for cycles in cards and other interesting mechanic relationships that might be strong in a particular set. So I think that would have actually been quite useful if they'd been able to sort of put it in somehow. And also sort of show which ones are printed specifically for this. In fact, for that, they do give, saying that they do give a new card for this release. It's actually done there with asterisk, so you do get to see which new cards are in the release. And it makes a point as well with this particular product, although they've not been printed in any boosters or any set, they are legal for play in vintage and legacy format, and that's really what's led to this sort of price increase, where certain cards within the packs have turned out to be or potentially could be bombs in vintage and legacy, and so these decks have been snapped up. On the other side, we've got a little bit of backstory for a couple of the generals. I think it's just 2 of them. And then also there's the explanation of the sort of basic philosophy behind Commander, and then actually slightly more detail about how to play the game, set it up, use your Commander, and how to actually build a Commander deck if you want to personalise the deck or build a new one. So it's important to know what basic principles there are behind the Commander format. So playing the deck. So with this deck, we've got green in here, so I wouldn't be surprised to find that we're going to be sort of building up creatures, pumping them up, that sort of thing. But we'll just see here. So it says, Marath grows larger and larger the more mana you spend on him, meaning that this one commander you're able to cast over and over again. And since you can spend his +1/+1 counters on his powerful toolbox of abilities, you have unparalleled control over when he leaves the battlefield, enabling you to cast him turn after turn if you choose. Early on, Marath will be most impactful, building up an army of tokens to control the red zone. Later, his creature buffing ability can be useful winning fights against your opponent's biggest creatures or protecting your own from damage-based removal. And in the endgame, Marath can directly take out an opponent softened up by your constant assault. This deck features lots of mana ramp, spells that speed up your access to large amounts of mana, which is great for such a mana-hungry commander. You can also use that mana to cast huge, powerful creatures, but be careful to avoid overcommitting your resources to the battlefield. Commander games feature a lot of mass removal, spells and effects that destroy all creatures on the battlefield. Saving a creature card to follow up that destruction will put you in a great position as everyone tries to recover. And as the saying goes, it's always the last fatty that wins the game for you. Okay, so let's just go back to this deck. And I think, just reading that does raise an important point about Commander colours and the colours in the decks. Is that, when you're looking for inspiration, for instance, in a red, green, white deck like this, it's good to think, okay, what does the philosophy of red or green or white give me? By having white in this deck, what card pool, what mechanics, what typically white things is that going to open up to me? And then the ability to be able to hunt through your collection for stuff that is going to be a theme in white or green or red. Okay, so here we go. We've got Marath, Will of the Wild, so our main commander. Legendary creature, elemental beast, mythic, 0/0. So obviously somewhere in here there's going to be something that's going to give power and toughness. Because if it didn't, the moment you played this, it would have no toughness. So what does that? Well, Marath, Will of the Wild enters the battlefield with a number of +1/+1 counters on it, equal to the amount of mana spent to cast it. X, remove X +1/+1 counters from Marath, choose one, put X +1/+1 counters on target creature, or Marath deals X damage to target creature or player, or put an XX green elemental creature token onto the battlefield. Now it pays to think a little bit about that first ability. So you're looking at it and you're going, well, this is red, green, white to cast. So we've spent 3 mana in those colours. So that's going to be a 3/3. Now the important thing to remember with this is every time you cast a commander, it costs an additional 2 colourless for each time it's been cast from the command zone previously. So because this is going to get more expensive, the number of counters on it is going to increase as you recast it. And this is the point about you can take the counters, move them onto other things, and then recast this, and this comes back larger with more counters on it, and just sort of repeat that process. So obviously it's good to watch out in commander decks anything that synergizes well with the commander's casting of a commander. This business that, you know, every time you cast it you pay 2 colourless more for each time it's been cast from the command zone previously. Grazing Gladeheart, Croson Warchief, Male and Anemic, I keep going to say it, the Anemic, Mael the Anima. So this is an alternative commander. Red, green, white, obviously same colours, 2/3. 3 red, green, white, tap. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a creature card with power 5 or greater from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. And the point is as well, of course, if you use a different commander, then that's going to obviously slightly change the way the deck behaves in relation to casting the commander, because although the other commander, your main commander would still be in your deck, because you're no longer going to be casting it from the command zone, you're going to be playing it like a regular creature, then that is have a certain impact on certain aspects of this deck. Drum Hunter, Mold Shambler, Terror Ravager, Ravenous Baloth, so another is a rare here. 2 colourless, 2 green for a 4/4, sacrifice a beast, you gain 4 life is its ability. Spellbreaker Behemoth, 1 colourless red, 2 green for a 5/5. Spellbreaker Behemoth can't be countered. Creature spells you control with power 5 or greater can't be countered. So I'm going to keep a lookout for this 5 or greater business, because that's the second time I think we've seen that. Gargi the Honoured One, 2 colourless red, green, white. 4/4 mythic legendary creature beast. Whenever a creature attacks one of your opponents or a planeswalker an opponent controls, that creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Rakeclaw Gargantuan, Spite Bellows, Deadwood Treefolk, Crater Helion, another rare, so 4 colourless, 2 red for a creature Helion beast, 6/6, got Echo on it as well, so for 4 colourless, 2 red. At the beginning of your upkeep, if this came under your control since the beginning of your last upkeep, sacrifice it unless you pay its Echo cost. When Crater Helion enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage to each other creature. Magus of the Arena, 4/2 red, again another rare, creature human wizard, 5/5, 3 colourless, and tap it. Tap target creature you control and target creature an opponent's choice. Tap creature an opponent's choice he or she controls. Those creatures fight each other. Baloth Woodcrasher, Rampaging Baloths, mythic. Here, 4 colourless, 2 green, 6/6. Creature beast with trample and landfall on it. So whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a 4/4 green beast creature token onto the battlefield. So something else that we want to look out for is in this deck is things that are going to facilitate landfall. So maybe land that fetches other land or brings land into play, or cards that make you fetch out and bring additional lands into play. Valley Rennet or Rannet, Avenger of Zendikar, another one here that's marked up as a mythic, 4 5 colourless, 2 green for a 5/5 creature elemental. When Avenger of Zendikar enters the battlefield, put a 0/1 green plant creature token onto the battlefield for each land you control. Also has landfall on it. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a +1/+1 counter on each plant creature you control. So again, maybe you want to look out, see if there's additional cards in here that again bring in plant creatures. Crozen Tusker, Archangel, Eternal Dragon. So we've got a rare here, 5 and 2 white for a 5/5 creature dragon spirit with flying. 3 and 2 white. We can return Eternal Dragon from our graveyard to our hand and activate this ability only during our upkeep. It's got plane cycling on it, so for 2 colourless we can discard the card, search our library for a planes card, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Naya Soul Beast, another rare, 6 and 2 green. It's got 0/0, so again we're looking for something that's going to put something on this to have at least some toughness. Trample on it. When you cast Naya Soul Beast, each player reveals the top card of his or her library. When Naya Soul Beast enters the battlefield with X/1/1 counters on it, where X is the total converted mana cost of all cards revealed this way. Soul Ring, this is in all the other decks. Swiftfoot Boot, so we're now moving on to artifacts, and you can see a number of these cards that are repeated in other decks, and this is one of the advantages with artifacts. Because they're colourless, you don't get bogged down in the commander's colours. Druidic Satchel, 3 colourless, it's rare, and for 2 colourless tap, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, would put a 1/1 green sapling creature token onto the battlefield. If it's a land card, put that card onto the battlefield under your control. If it's a non-creature, non-land card, you gain 2 life. Behemoth Sledge, Seer's Sundial, so another artifact that's a rare, 4 colourless. It's got landfall on it. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card. Tower of Fortunes, 4 colourless, another rare, 8 colourless and tap, draw 4 cards. Darksteel Mutation, so this is an enchantment. Curse of Chaos, so we're moving on to our enchantments now. War Cadence, I think that is. Curse of the Forsaken. Curse of Predation, so we're seeing curses in these commander decks as a reoccurring thing. Father of Yawimaya, Where Ancients Tread, 4 colourless and a red. It's an enchantment. Whenever a creature with power 5 or greater, so it's other sort of power 5 or greater theme we've seen before, enters the battlefield under your control, you may have Where Ancients Tread deal 5 damage to target creature or player. Witch Hunt, another rare. 4 and a red. Enchantment. Players can't gain life. At the beginning of your upkeep, Witch Hunt deals 4 damage to you. At the beginning of your end step, target opponent chosen at random gains control of Witch Hunt. Mystic Barrier, another rare. 4 and a white. When Mystic Barrier enters the battlefield, or at the beginning of your upkeep, choose left or right. Each player may attack only the opponent seated nearest him or her in the last chosen direction, and planeswalkers controlled by that player. Warstorm Urge, 5 and a red. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player. Spawning Grounds, another rare. 6 and 2 green. Enchant Land. Enchanted Land has tap, put a 5/5 green beast creature token with trample onto the battlefield. Now we've got a charm here, so this is one of our instants. A Boros Charm. Sprouting Vines. A Naya Charm. Slice in Twain. Street Spasm. Restore, we've seen Restore in other decks that have green. Hull Breach. Cultivate. So this is an example of a card that's going to let us search for up to 2 basic land cards. Reveal those cards and put one onto the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand. So that's going to help with a little bit with our landfall. Fiery Justice, so this is a rare. Red, green, white to cast. Sorcery. Fiery Justice deals 5 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or players. Target opponent gains 5 life. From the Ashes, another rare. 3 and a red, destroy all non-basic lands. For each land destroyed this way, its controller may search his or her library for a basic land card and put it into the battlefield. Then each player who sacrifices his or her library this way shuffles it. Tempt with Discovery. So 3 and a green for this particular rare, and this got tempting offer on it. So search your library for a land card and put it onto the battlefield. Each opponent may search his or her library for a land card and put it onto the battlefield. For each opponent who searches a library this way, search your library for a land card and put it onto the battlefield. Then each player who searched the library this way shuffles it. Harmonise. Wrath of God, so we've got a board sweeper here. Destroy all creatures, they can't be regenerated. For 2 and 2 white. 1 dozen eyes. Slice and Dice. Rain of Thorns. Fireball. Savage Twister. And now we move on to our non-basic lands. So these are obviously, several of these are going to help us fix in our colours. Boris Garrison, so enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters the battlefield you have to return the land you control to its owner's hand, so it's going to bounce stuff out. And then you can, once it becomes untapped, you can then tap it for red, white. Boros Gilgate enters the battlefield tapped, and this taps for red or white. Command Tower we've seen before, so this lets you add 1 mana of any colour in your commander's colour identity. Contested Cliffs, so this is a rare. Tap, add 1 colourless to your mana pool, and for a cost of red, green, tap target beast creature you control, fights target creature and opponent controls. Drifting Meadow comes into the battlefield tapped. You can tap it for 1 for white mana, and it also has cycling on it, so for 2 colourless you can discard the card and draw a card. Evolving Wild, so this is a fetch land. You can tap it, sack it, search your library for a basic land card and then put it into the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. The important thing about this is, of course, it's land itself, so when it comes into play it's going to trigger landfall, and when you sacrifice it and hunt down another land which then enters the battlefield, even though it's tapped, that's also going to trigger landfall. Forgotten Cave enters the battlefield tapped, generates red mana but also has cycling for red on it. Gruul Gilgate enters the battlefield tapped, taps for red or green. Homeward Path taps for colourless mana, but you can also tap it and each player gains control of all creatures he or she owns. Homeward Path. Jungle Shrine enters the battlefield tapped again. Tap, add red, green or white to your mana pool. Kalni Garden. I had a feeling this would be in here because this is this was in a deck I unboxed. I think it was the Power Hungry deck. And the importance of this is there was an earlier card which put plant creature tokens into play, and then had the ability to put I think it was tokens on it to do something to them. I just can't remember at the moment. And I was thinking that this probably be one of the non-basic lands that would appear in here. So it enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters the battlefield you put a 0/1 green plant creature token onto the battlefield, and it can also tap for green mana. Mosswalk Bridge. So this is a rare non-basic land. It's got Hideaway. This land enters the battlefield tapped. When it does, look at the top 4 cards of your library, exile 1 face down, then put the rest on the bottom of your library. Also taps for green mana, and for a cost of green you can tap it. You may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost if creatures you control have total power 10 or greater. Naya Panorama. It's colourless to our mana pool, but for 1 colourless we can tap it, sacrifice it and search out a basic mountain, forest or plains card and put that into the battlefield tapped. New Benalia enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, you can get to scry for 1. So if you remember scrying, look at the top card of your library. You may put that card on the bottom of your library, and it also taps for white mana. Opal Palace. This is another one based on commander colours. We've seen this in all the other decks. So you tap it for 1 colourless, but also 1 and tap. So you're filtering other lands here effectively. You can add to your mana pool 1 mana of any colour in your commander's identity. If you spend this mana to cast your commander, so here's the extra bit, it enters the battlefield with a number of +1/+1 counters on it, equal to the number of times it's been cast from the command zone in this game. And obviously this card is going to have a big impact on the ability of the, I think it was, Marath, where it's saying enters the battlefield with a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the amount of mana you spend to cast it. So that's also going to put more +1/+1 counters on it as part of its own ability here, if that was used to cast Marath. And also to the number of times it's been cast from the command zone. Rupture Spire enters the battlefield tapped. When Rupture Spire enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless you pay 1 colourless. Tap, add 1 mana of any colour to your mana pool. So there's a number of cards here which will add any mana based on certain conditions or have certain extra abilities attached to them. Secluded Step. Secluded Step enters the battlefield tapped. Tap it, add white to your mana pool, and it has cycling for white. Selesnya Guildgate, so we're seeing here green-white side of things. Selesnya Guildgate enters the battlefield tapped. Tap, add green or white to your mana pool. Selesnya Sanctuary. Not surprisingly, this generates green and white, but on the downside, it enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters the battlefield, you have to bounce a land you control back to your hand. Slippery Cast. Slippery Cast enters the battlefield tapped. Add green, and it's got cycling for 2 on it. Smouldering Crater enters the battlefield tapped. Tap it for red, and it's got cycling for 2 colourless. Temple of the False God. Tap for 2 colourless. Activate this ability only if you control 5 or more lands. Tranquil Thicket enters the battlefield tapped. Tap for green and has cycling for 1 green. Vitu Ghazi the City Tree, tapped for so that's 1 colourless. And for 2 green-white, you can tap in and put a 1/1 green sapling creature token onto the battlefield. Vivid Crag enters the battlefield tapped. This comes in with 2 charge counters. Tap it for red mana, but you can also tap it and remove a charge counter from Vivid Crag, and that will add 1 mana of any colour to your mana pool. And then we've got our mountains. So we're moving on to our basic land component now. Our forests here, and again, it looks very much that we've got, and there are plains that we've got sort of core set themed like artwork. So the breakdown on that was, there's 5 mountains, 8 forests and 4 plains in our basic land component. So there we have it. There's our nature of the beast commander deck. We've got our 3 oversized commanders with our main commander, or first choice commander, which is Marath, Will of the Wild, and then our 2 other alternate commanders, if you will. Thanks for watching.